I have seen what's done under the sun. And that's the frame. That's the border. That's of the picture that Ecclesiastes is painting. Now, other books of the Bible, they describe how things should be, such as the law of Moses, or how things can be, such as the ethical encouragements in Paul's letters, or even how things will be, such as the renewed heaven and earth in the teaching of the prophets and of Jesus in the book of Revelation. But the limit, the focus of the book of Ecclesiastes is on how things are under the sun. But as I've said before, this brutal realism that we have in Ecclesiastes, in our culture, it tends to produce cynicism and despair or denial through amusements or drugs or other distractions. But in Ecclesiastes, his method of disillusioning us into wisdom seeks to draw us into reverence. And with that, as we saw last week, into joy and contentment and thankfulness. But the question is, why did God give us a book like this? I mean, the answer is, and it's a surprise, but it's in the text, so that we'd learn how to enjoy despite frustration, so we'd learn how to be wise despite complexity, and so we'd learn how to act despite risks. And the thing we can so easily miss in Ecclesiastes is that it's a positive book, it's a hopeful book, but it comes to hope, it comes to joy and contentment, not through some sort of religious portal or by denying the hard things that are in life and emphasizing only the good things. It comes to these good things while it stares without blinking at the meaninglessness, the oppression and evil that is done under the sun, as well as seeing what's truly good and lasting for us to be and do. So to answer the question another way, why did God give us this book? It was to teach us to be resilient. So I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands, but no one knows whether love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny. The righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. As it is with the good, so it is with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so it is with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of people, moreover, are full of evil, and there is madness in their hearts while they live. And afterwards they join the dead. Anyone who is among the living has hope, but a live dog is better off than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hates, their jealousies have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part of anything that happens under the sun. In this part of the painting that Ecclesiastes is giving us of life under the sun, there is a sense in which the good, the wise, do no better than the bad and the foolish. We all face similar challenges in life, whether it'll be love or hate, good or bad, who can tell? And finally, we all die. But the point is, there is a limit to what wisdom or righteousness will achieve for us under the sun. And part of becoming wise is knowing that, knowing the limits of wisdom, knowing there is a great deal that is beyond our capacity to change or even to properly understand. And there are clear limits to our responsibilities, which when you think about it, is a great relief. Now, the curious thing in Ecclesiastes is, in fact, also in the rest of the Bible, is that knowing this does not lead to fatalism. It leads instead to reverence with action. Therefore, Ecclesiastes goes on to say, enjoy life. And we go, what? He says, because of frustration, because of uncertainty, because of love and hate, because of good and evil and death, all that happens under the sun, take hold of life while you can. Be wise, be strong, be proactive. Take hold of what life gives you and do it as well and as wisely as you can. In other words, act. It's almost the complete opposite of what our culture does, isn't it? When we can't insulate ourselves against hardship, when what is done under the sun happens to us, we get paralyzed, or we get indulgent, or we get stupid. But Ecclesiastes says what we need to become is resilient. And we look at the world, and we see how things are. We see the brilliance, and we see the foolishness. We see the beauty and the terror, the good, the evil, the planning and the chance, the smooth sailing and the storms. And still we find gifts of joy in it. Still we persist in acting. Still we can take risks, because that is what wise living looks like. So the teacher sees that wisdom, skill, strength have real limits. The first one is that one fate comes to everyone. But the second limitation to wisdom is that time and chance also happen to everyone. Now, we live, and we are living through a time where that is unusually obvious. We're living in a time where the wisest of us cannot see what our world or culture will be like when the pandemic eases. We're living in a time when the wisest approach in business or in family life or in church life is to put aside our long-range plans and metrics and prepare to improvise. We live in a time when life is more uncertain and precarious than we're used to in Melbourne, Australia. We live in a time when it's wise to recognise the limitations of our wisdom. A time for those of us who are over-responsible to recognise the limits of our responsibilities. A time for those who are frozen or fearful or lacking in responsibility to learn how to act with courage in the face of all the uncertainties that we're currently living with. But still, what the teacher has seen is, even though the foolish and the wise come to the same end, and even though time and chance happens to both, even after we acknowledge the limitations of wisdom or of godliness, even after we see that wisdom may not be honoured, even though wisdom is stronger than military power, it can still be undone by just a little folly. Even after all these limitations, he still sees that under the sun, the quiet words of the wise are better than the shouting of fools. That's why I think in chapter 10, he gives us this series of examples where, even despite the limitations of wisdom and reverence, he shows that they are still better tools for navigating life than foolishness and wrong. All the examples he gives us actually have a very simple lesson, and it's this: wisdom is thinking one step ahead. There are risks in everything, but before you dig the pit or break through the wall or speak out of turn or open a second bottle of wine, be wise enough to ask, what will happen next? Now, I've been wondering why the teacher in Ecclesiastes gives us examples of wisdom, gives us these case studies in chapter 10 of just thinking one move ahead. I've been wondering whether or not that's enough. Now, I've been asking this because most people around St. Colum's think that a wise plan should be at least 3 to 5 moves ahead of the game. But what the teacher has seen under the sun is that life is much more complex than what even our best wisdom can deal with. That there are real limits to our wisdom. So he asks the wise question, what's the wisest way to deploy wisdom? The answer is to think and act just one move ahead. Now, I've been talking to people during this week who are treating others for mental health issues that have been accentuated really by the COVID pandemic. And it's actually helped me to understand that if we ask the question of ourselves, what happens next? It's a doable plan. It's actually not overwhelming. And it wisely allows for our circumstances to shift. It allows for wisdom to have its limits. It also allows for reverence and thankfulness. It allows room for us to learn how to be content with what we cannot change. And it takes away the burdens of over-responsibility that so many of us carry, especially when we try to plan many, many, many moves ahead of our limited wisdom. Because when we plan out too far, there's too many unknowns, and our plans will be frustrated, and we will struggle because of that. Let me try to illustrate for you how powerful just trying to think through the next step can be by telling you about the most dangerous thing I've ever done. And no, it wasn't getting 3 teenage girls through VCE in close succession, though that has to be a close second. The most dangerous thing I've ever done is to cut wood. Because for at least 2 hours every Saturday morning in autumn, winter, spring, I'd split wood. And summer and spring, I'd also gather wood from farms and valleys. I spent over 10 years doing this, and I lost count of the number of times I've been knocked off my feet by wood flying where it was not meant to fly. Twice I was knocked unconscious. I had near misses with a cranky radial saw. I tore the knees out of my jeans with chainsaw jammed and spat the chain back at me. I've been stung by wasps. I've lost count of the number of redback nests I'd crushed. I chased black snakes out of the wood pile. I bruised my toes through steel-capped boots. I'd strained my back, my legs, lugging logs, carrying loads. But the basic question that confronted me each Saturday morning when I stood there with a block of wood in front of me was, who's the master? The block of wood or the guy standing over it with the block splitter? And the answer is, it depends entirely on how much wisdom the guy holding the block splitter has. Has he thought one step ahead? Has he asked what happens next before he swings the axe? Because it depends on what type of wood that's in front of him. Is it peppermint gum? Is it blackwood? Or it's going to split clean? If it's messmate or red gum or ironbark, it might shatter into shards. It may need steel wedges. If it's green, if it's seasoned, there's a different approach. Are there knots? Are there fissures? Will the block open up along the fissures, or will it work better to peel the outer layers off the block as you follow the grain around the wood? Or is the chain on the saw tensioned and sharp and oiled? Are you standing the right way to deliver the right blow? Is this the right splitter for the job? What happens next? There's lots of potential answers to the question. And I'm only talking about cutting wood to keep a family warm. I'm not even getting close to the wisdom needed to run a country, or to tweak an economy, or to build an aeroplane or to have a good marriage, or perhaps most difficult of all, to negotiate a family Christmas dinner. That was meant to be a joke, but maybe it's not. Ecclesiastes sees that the difference for us, with all the risks we face in life, with all the limitations that are placed on our wisdom by time and chance, insofar as success depends upon us, then the difference between master or mastered is thinking just one step ahead. Jesus, Apostle Paul, wrote to the church in Ephesus in chapter 5 from verse 15 there. He said, "Be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity." Why? Because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is, and do not get drunk with wine, which leads to debauchery, but instead be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and songs from the Spirit. Sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. Always give thanks to God the Father for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Realism there, isn't there? The days are evil. Therefore be wise. Therefore prepare for action, but do it with reverence to the God who is over all, and with joy and thankfulness for his gifts. I wonder if Paul had been reading Ecclesiastes. You see, our media says all sorts of odd things about Christians. But the one thing it doesn't say is that when you become a Christian, you are being called into resilience. You are being called into wisdom that is wise, even about the limitations of wisdom. You're being called to adapt while holding on to reverence for God and the gifts of joy and thankfulness he offers us in life. And I want to finish with an illustration of how this has been applied by Christians. A friend of mine who works overseas in a place where it's not easy, or even in fact very welcome, to be a Christian, last week sent me an email. And it is a quote taken from teaching that was written on the wall in a Missions of Charity orphanage in Kolkata in India. But they were written there to teach the children reverent resilience for life under the sun. We finish with them. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you're honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway.